Sziasztok mindenkinek! Hello everyone, my name is Christine, and I am the host here at the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, the show where we connect your modern life to your Hungarian heritage. We will build bridges between Hungarians who live in Hungary to those with Hungarian heritage who live in all other parts of the world. Not to mention the bridges that we will build between the generations. This podcast is a place where everyone is welcome, where you don't even need to be Hungarian or speak Hungarian to join in on the fun. We will talk about all the things that we love about Hungary, the Hungarian people, and the Hungarian culture, as well as the cool things Hungarian people are doing around the world. We will discover new things, review things you may already know, and we will have a lot of fun along the way. So, if you're looking to make that first connection to your Hungarian heritage, or you're looking to dig a little deeper, then you're in the right place. Join me as we grow this community and continue to connect the circles of Hungarians around us. Welcome to this episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast. This episode is the first in a series of 3 episodes about stories, legends, folklore, and history behind many of the commonly visited tourist sites in Budapest and throughout Hungary. My guest for this series will be Eniko Almadi. Throughout her life, Eni has always been passionate about Hungarian history, folklore, and legends, and you will see that she possesses a great wealth of knowledge which we will be using to discuss and maybe discover new things we didn't know about the many places around Budapest and in Hungary. Eni is also a university student in Hungary studying history, where she will one day be able to connect her lifelong personal passions with her history degree to work in museums or as an historical researcher. For this 3-part series, Eni will help us dive a little deeper into why and how some of these famous places in Budapest and in Hungary actually came to be, as well as some of the interesting stories that happen in these places. So let's get started with the first episode in this series, where you will hear about some of the places in Budapest that maybe you've already visited. Maybe you'll hear about some places that you will be putting on your list for your first visit or your next visit. I would like to welcome Eniko Almadi to the podcast today. Welcome, Eni. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hello, Christina, and hello, everyone around the world and for New York. My name is Eniko, and welcome, and thank you to get me in here.
So today we're going to be talking about stories and legends behind some of the commonly visited tourist sites in Budapest, as well as some Hungarian legends. And you're a little bit of an expert in that department. So before we get started with talking about those things, tell us a little bit about how you became so interested in all of this information that you're going to share.
Well, it started with my school thing. I think it was started in my school because I have got very good teacher from the literature and the Hungarian history as well. And there was a lot of story behind everything. If I look around in Hungary, mostly in Budapest, you can see lots of places full with mythological things, maybe some designs, symbols, or statues. And I was really interested about them. So I always asking not only my teachers, but my father, my mother, and as well my grandmother, who passed away last year. But she was very good in the stories. So she shared with me a lot of time. She was very good in the stories because she was born here in Hungary, and she was a Jewish woman during the Second World War. So there was a lot of story, and she always shared with me, not only about Hungary, but as well her lifetime.
Wow. So before we start talking about the places, one more important question. Tell us a little bit about your Hungarian heritage. Now, clearly you live in Hungary, so you're Hungarian. But, sometimes, you might be first generation there or, have different parents from different places. So tell us a little bit.
In Hungary, this is a very interesting question because even if you're born in here, even if you live in here, that not will be meaning that you are a Hungarian woman or man, because Hungary, it's a little bit mixed, because we had that a lots of occupation that centuries by centuries, for example, by the Turkish, by the Germans, by Russians, of course, USSR, and they always contacted us a little bit further, and they always mixed us. So that's not really supposed to be mean I am Hungarian. I am born in here. My father and my mother also was born in here, and my grandfather was a hussar, so he was a soldier with a horse, and of course the hussar sword. But maybe as I know, maybe my great grandfather was a Transylvanian man who came to here, Hungary, around the medieval times, and he got maybe a baron. I think it is a title. It was baron. He was a baron.
Wow.
So yeah, he was a baron, and one of my ancestors was hiding with Rákóczi II, who was very famous in Hungary, and he wrote 3 or 4 books about Transylvania. How was while he went to there with Rákóczi Ferenc. So that was what I know about my family. But even if you live in here, I'm not sure I'm Hungarian, because the real Hungarians are, I think it's missed by the centuries. They get a lot of traditional things which is inherited in nowadays people, but we not really think about us as a normal Hungarian, because the old ones is melted into these new people. Centuries by centuries, we also had some other people, for example, Bavarians. By Maria Theresia said, you need to come in here, you need to live in here, us, the Germans as well. So yeah, but it's okay, I'm Hungarian, of course. So that is it mean. If you are Hungarian, you are a blended one.
I feel like that's such an amazing explanation, because even though you were born in Hungary and your parents are, there's more to it. Like you said, with border changes over the centuries and occupations. And that's definitely something people don't take into consideration when they look at the country of Hungary. They don't realize, if they don't know a lot about Hungary and its history, that how much change has taken place over the past few centuries. So that was an interesting explanation about your heritage, because there's a lot to think about.
Not so many people know about that. How was the history look like then? The first occupation started by maybe the 3rd or 4th century, because Saint Stephen, the first king, told his son when he felt he will die soon, please give the people who come in here, not only for the Hungarians, not only for your own people, the new people, fields, come into them, open your arm, open our place, our maybe the sacred word, and let them into it. When the new people came in here, Saint Stephen gave them a lot of field. So that is how Hungary was. Maybe I think it's overloaded a little bit. But yeah.
I like that. I feel like my experience with Hungarians is that they're very hospitable. So it seems like it's been happening for centuries. I like that a lot. Let's get down to the business at hand. Let's talk about some of these tourist sites where there's stories and legends behind them, because maybe someone's planning a trip to Hungary, or maybe someone's been to Hungary already and they've taken pictures in front of statues and places. And now, so whether you've been or you haven't been, I think you're going to find a lot of interesting information. One of the most common stories. So if you know a Hungarian, you might know this one, but let's start off with the Lion's Mouth and the Chain Bridge in Budapest. Tell us about that one, Amy.
Yeah, that one is the well-known, the best, the famous, the well-known story. Yeah, that one, it is by the builder. As you know, there was around that, maybe it's 1894 or 95, and that was the time when we a little bit fed up with the Habsburgs, because they were just a little bit. Yeah, because they said they told us we not have the access to use our language. they started to force us to use Deutsch, or as you guess, they can say the German language against ours. And we can't talk our language inside the schools, not in the law system, not in the doctor system, not everywhere, just only at home. And they started to force us to leave Hungarian behind us. And that was for the common people by a little bit fed up. The other problem was we doesn't have the right to access our own rules, because if somebody is wanted to make maybe a new rule about Hungarian fields, or somebody can build somewhere else, first they went to Vienna and spoke with the people who was in the judging there. And we not have a judgment in here. We doesn't have separately parliament. A little bit reminded us for the English system as now together with the Scottish. Okay. And we doesn't have anything like that. And our people, we are living in two separately places in Budapest. Buda and Pest was separately. There was free part of Budapest. Buda was the side of the bridge in the right side, and as you see or so, there is a lot of hills up in there, and the noble people lived in there. Always the nobles were around there. There was the castle, of course, the king home, and around a lot of people like that one. And the flat place, the Pest side, that was the common people's home. Always the commons lived in here, the workers, later the Jewish, so lots of people like that, but not the nobles. And everything started in Pest because the youngers a little bit started to fed up, and they started to get a rise against the Habsburgs. And when it started, the Buda side stayed in calm and not say anything against the Habsburgs. The Pest side was in fire. We are get a little bit we started the revolution. We started everything. Buddha was in still and said, "Oh, there is nothing problem with the Habsburgs. They are very kind people. They are very lovely." And we told them, of course, of course, you said that. So the builder and the designer of the landseed or the chain bridge told us, "Okay, Pest, you are the fire. You are the brave personality of Hungary, the spirit of Hungary. So I put the tangle inside the lion in the Pest side because you started to open your mouth. But Buddha, because was still inside in calm and stay maybe a little bit too calm, and they not say anything. They not receive that tangle. They not defend us. They not deserve that. So the lions will be stay in calm in that side, and they not have any tangle." That's what the Smith said.
So that's interesting that like the builder used the architecture of the lions to either put a tongue or not put a tongue on the lion. And there's political history behind that. I think most people don't know that part of the story. They know that this is the recollection that I have, is that a little kid looked up at his mother and says, "Oh, why doesn't the lion have a tongue?" And then the builder jumped into the Danube. I don't know if that part is true, but it's very interesting that there was a political reason that the sculptor of these lions created the lions with or without a tongue.
Yeah, as we know, far as we know, the Pest side, the two one have the tangle. The Buddha side, it's not.
Well, I know that they've just recently been restored and cleaned. So, and I have pictures of them on both sides. So now I'm going to have to analyze those pictures and see.
You need a little bit better zooming. That one.
A little bit of a double checking there. So interesting. So the next tourist spot we're going to talk about is St. Stephen's Basilica. And you told me that there's a little bit of a legend with how and why it was built and a flood. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was the Danube big flooded. It was around 1843 or something like that. And the people started to run out from their houses because the Danube, it was very, very overflowing than the normally. And there was a little hill in that time, in that spot. And the people gathering in there. And if God saved them from the flooded and drowning, they will build a beautiful basilica for him, to praise him, to get everything for what he wants. And the flooded is down. So they started to build the beautiful basilica.
That's an interesting story because it's also a very famous square, so when
Mm.
tourists visit, they do see that big square, especially if you go during the holidays, they have Christmas markets
Yay.
there. So if you do travel and people that travel, visiting churches and things like that
Mm.
are very popular things to do because that's where a lot of like the artwork and the history is located.
Yeah.
But now when you go back to St. Stephen's Basilica, now you'll know why it was built. And you will often see, like in the center of the little square, a statue, like a tall, thin, kind of like pole.
Yeah, there is a lots of old statues around in there, and the Buddha side you will find the oldest one because the people when they survived the plague, the Black Death, they always erected statues for to remember as a memento for themselves. They survived, and whenever you're going around in Buddha or Pest, and you will see maybe inside the Buddha Hill side, and in the Pest side, maybe around the marketplace, there is a big one that is for a memento. We survived the Black Death.
There's squares like outside St. Stephen's Basilica, but there's also smaller squares in and around Budapest and in Hungary as well. And that's to represent that they survived the plague. So let's move on to, this is one of my favorite stories that you told me. Now, if you haven't been to Margaret Island in Budapest, it's definitely worth taking a full day to explore that island because there is so much. And it's really right in the center of the city. So there's a big story behind why it's called Margaret Island. So Amy, tell us why that is.
Yeah, that is Margaret. Yeah, that one is a very old story. It is started around that was the year of the Tatars or the Tatar invasion. Everybody said differently way. Doesn't matter. The king was Bela the Fourth. He was the second founder of Hungary because during the Tatars he left Hungary, of course, because everybody's left who can. But he told God, if he helped us and he chased away the Tatars and he will return, he will rebuild Hungary, and he also offered her his own girl, her only daughter, to go to the god. And what does it matter? The Tatars are gone. Nobody knows for sure what happened. Nowadays, the historians said maybe the Khan, the great Khan, died and they went back to the Khan choosing. Nobody's know for sure, but they left. And Bela returned with his daughter, Margaret, the princess, who was around 14 years old almost at the time. But some sources says she was younger, maybe 8. So anyway, he offered her, and she went to the embassy, which was in the island. Around the island, there was a lot of bunny. So first of all, the normal name was before that the Bunny Island. And before that, it was the Plague Island because Plague people was sent in there to die, whatever. So there was the little monastery, and she was in there as a nun. When she became a nun, she was very good as a nun. She was very kind with the other nuns. She asked them not call her princess, not really care about who is she or who is she isn't. She wanted to become a nun. But when her father came to visit her, she always got dirt herself. She was a little bit scared about what will happen with her or not. She's a little bit nervous. So she started to get more dirtier, more smellier when every time, and she get laces on her hair. Sometimes she's get dragged into the dog's fences. So she was very awful. And the king a little bit gets stressed out and he never visit again her. And she was very happy about this, but she wasn't happy because she wanted to become a queen. She wanted to get married or something like that. But no, she doesn't have this fate because she was still there as a nun. And when she was around 21 or 22 years old, maybe the source is differently, she died and she was buried. But the nuns, maybe 6 months later, wanted to rebury her, and they went to the tomb, and her body was like perfect. She was like just laying down and sleeping there. her body smells like the roses, fragrances, and everything else. She was looked like perfectly. And everybody says, okay, this is not normal thing. That means she's maybe a saint. So she was canonized and she became Saint Margaret around maybe 1906, no, 36 or something like that. When the first canonized happened, not really, the people not really cared about that. But she re-canonized and she is now became one of our oldest saints. Nobody knows where is her real bones and ashes are. We have got a tomb in the ruins of the monastery, but that is not her real tomb. Not really know where is she now. Maybe she lost during the war, maybe the First World War. Nobody know for sure, unfortunately.
Right.
So,
that was
yeah.
actually going to be my question. Like, is she
Mhm.
actually buried on Margaret Island? So nobody's
No,
sure.
unfortunately not. No, no. There is the tomb, but there is the tomb, and there is the Well, there is the, as I remember, a sentences which it says there is the Margaret remember, and maybe the ashes, but nobody for sure. Nobody
Right.
knows where is she.
Right, but there's remains of the monastery, or like where the nuns were. There's an old relics of the building. It's there that you
Of
can
course.
see. Yeah.
And they built there, as I remember, an Michael Archangel chapel as well. And you can go in there, and also you can offer not only for Margaret, for some people to get better, because she had a lots of miracles. If you want to canonize somebody into the Catholic Church, you need to prove that that person, when it was alive, made miracles. And there was a lots of miracles which is connected to her. Sometimes she was able to cure a person who almost died, or she was also cured some lepra or something like that. So yeah, lots of like that. So many people who have got very bad illness, not the death one, but it is very serious. They always go into there and offer some money or something to get better. And also, they asked Michael Archangel to look after them. Yeah, Hungarians are really like this, do this.
Well, I think people always like to look for something positive when they have a hard time. So if you haven't been to Margaret Island, I mean, I think I didn't go to Margaret Island until like maybe the third or fourth time I went to Budapest. And you could spend the whole day there because there's more than just the relics of that building. You know, there's gardens and fountains and trails to walk and swimming and a lot of amazing things that you can do there.
Yeah, there is an old temple in there, which is also inside the route of as I remember, the sacred route when you're going to visit some other places. Yeah, it was inside there. And there is also some ruin of a very old hotel, because there was another hotel which was built maybe, as I remember, in the 1800s. And it was very famous hotel in that time, but unfortunately the Second World War, almost everything destroyed.
I'm sure.
So yeah.
Well, it's definitely something to keep in mind if you're going to Budapest, that if you visit Margaret Island, there's way more to the story than meets the eye. Okay, so let's move a little bit further in the opposite direction in Budapest. And I don't know if I'm saying this properly, so please correct me. The Vajdahunyad Castle?
Vajdahunyad, yeah, Vajdahunyad.
So it's not an original castle,
no.
but it looks like one. So tell us a little bit about the story behind that. And then there's also a statue behind it too. So tell us all about that.
Okay. So yeah, everything is happened in 1896, because as far as we know, we went to Hungary and conquered this beautiful place around 896. And when it was 1,000 years later, which we started to celebrate and made a holiday of the millennial and an anniversary, of course. And they started to build by fences and woods the Vajdahunyad Castle replica. Vajdahunyad Castle is in Transylvania, and it is famous about Vajdahunyad János, or John, Corvinus John, as we know, and he was very famous about to kill the Turks. He was the Turkish beater or Turk beater. There is a lots of name of him, and he had two sons, Matthias and Laszlo. Laszlo was executed because he was also a very kind person, but he went to the Hungarian throne and not really liked by the noble people. But Laszlo left his little brother Matthias, and he became Hungarian's king in the Renaissance time, and he was very good. He started to flourish Hungary. And the Vajdahunyad Castle is his father's home, and it was a replica built by the Woods, and it was the plan after the millennial. It was destroyed, and it will be there is something else behind there. But the people really enjoyed that because there you can find every aspects of the Hungarian architecture. You can find every details from the Romans through the centuries. You can find the replica of some old, for example, temples. Yaki temple, for example, you can go to Yak and find the original one, and that is the Roman, and you can find from the Renaissance as well. So differently centuries architecture in there. And there is the Museum of the Agriculture, because we are an agriculture nation. And you can go in there and you can see about the Hungarians' lifetime museum, and you can see how we were hunters and we were always agriculture nation. You can find everything in there. Century started with maybe the Mongol times, because we are maybe in Eurasia, nowadays Mongolia, and until nowadays. And that is why it's a lovely place. Every night, if you go into there, it is always there is lights around in there, and it's made very romantical. People like it because it's so romantic.
It is a very beautiful place, really any time of year to walk around, whether it's winter or the warmer months. But, so some people that visit may not realize that, it isn't hundreds and hundreds of years old. It was built because of the a millennial celebration, similar to Ferris wheels. Like I believe in London, they erected their Ferris wheel as a millennium, I guess, not symbol, but something to celebrate the millennium. And, all of these things were always meant to be taken down, but it seems like they became tourist attractions, and many other cities have adopted Ferris wheels, which there is one in Budapest as well. So it's interesting. So now behind the castle, behind the castle, there's a statue. Tell us about that statue.
Yeah, that is Jefferson. Jefferson statue, as you can see him, because not many people knew that, but when the 1848-49 the Revolution War was outgazed, the people started to the war. And our leader, Kossuth Lajos, or Lajos Kossuth, went to America to get aid and help for the Hungarians. And people really, really, I think they heard him out. And of course, he was a great preacher. He was very, very good in the words. People said, oh my gosh, he is like the Hungarian Thomas Jefferson. And the people who lived in Cleveland, Hungarian people who live in Cleveland, told us, we give you a Thomas Jefferson statue, and we send back a Kossuth Lajos statue, and you can find the statue as I think the Pentagon. There is in the Pentagon only one Hungarian leader, that is Kossuth Lajos. He is our Thomas Jefferson.
Interesting. So you can see a statue of Thomas Jefferson behind say that again, the Vajdahunyad Castle?
Yeah, Vajdahunyad.
So if you see the statue of Thomas Jefferson, now you know why.
And you can find there is another statue inside the castle. If you go into inside the castle area, you can find a person who's sitting with a pen in his arm and his hand, and he is always hooded and nobody see his face. That is Anonymous. Anonymous was the writer of Béla the Third, And he was the person who wrote down the Hungarians' history, and he was the first person who named the 7 leader of the Hungarians. And there is maybe not a legend, but that is a very good habit. If somebody started to go maybe a new wave of writing or wanted to become a writer or going to a writing test, you need to go to the statue and touch the pen, because anonymous pen will give you some advice, wisdom, and some spirit to make it better.
Well, I know exactly that statue, and I definitely have a picture of that. So next time I go, I will definitely rub the pen of that statue. That's great. I love it. And that's it for this episode with Eniko Almadi. We will be back very soon with the second episode in this series of 3, so stay tuned. And thanks for joining me today for this episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, and I hope you enjoyed all of the history and folklore that Amy had to share with us. I know that I learned a few things myself, and I hope that you did too. So stay tuned to hear about more history and folklore about the places and spaces in Budapest and Hungary with Amy. Also, don't forget to check the show notes for this episode to find out how you can connect with Eniko Almadi. Thanks for listening. If you have feedback or questions about today's episode, or you would like to connect with me at the podcast, you will also find my email, social media information, and podcast website in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this episode and you're interested in learning more about this Hungarian heritage community that we are building, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from you. A big thanks to my audio editor, Tori Irvin, for working her audio magic on this episode and every episode of this podcast. Our theme music is Hungarian Dance by Pony Music, used with special license from Envato Market. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcast, so we can continue to connect our modern lives with our Hungarian heritage and grow this Hungarian heritage community. Until next time, goodbye everyone. Sziasztok mindenkinek!